Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Cindy, the LD educator, and as you know, I teach special education. Well, today is a special video and I have a guest with me. This is Bae. What's your name, Bae?
Jason, her husband. I guess the husband, LD educator, something. I don't know.
Something like that. So listen, today we will be reviewing the Netflix documentary Becoming. I am really excited. If I look tired, it's because I am. We just finished watching it. So Jason,
Yes.
I'm gonna put you in the hot seat.
Okay.
What do you think about the documentary?
I thought the documentary overall was really, really good. Gave some great insight. So a little bit of backstory. We did actually read the book.
Becoming, yes.
Yeah, so we read the Becoming book as well as we did the audio book of it as well. So we did kind of both. Really, really enjoyed it. And I thought this gave you glimpses of stuff if you hadn't read the book. Some pieces that were in there, but then most of it was kind of new stuff as well. So seeing her take the show on the road, in a sense, to all the arenas, but then also just little intimate moments, little tidbits and unseen stuff and footage.
Right. So if you have seen Becoming, you still would love to see this.
Absolutely.
Because it's like a backseat to the tours and everything that she did during that whole tour of the book. And I have to tell you, I am a crier and I teared up several times. Like, it's just really inspirational to me. Like her story, what she had to endure as the first lady, what she had to overcome, and how she really had to fight for self. Yeah. Basically, that's what it was, right?
Yeah, and I think it paralleled some of the high point chapters of the book in a sense. Mm-hmm. So that's what I said. So even though it wasn't like about the book, if you had to, in your mind, section off different movements, if you will, it kind of covered some of the same ground. I don't know if it was the same order, but kind of covered some of the same ground that the book did. So it was really, really well done, really, really great and inspiring and all of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So one of the really powerful comments that she made, like early on, I think, in the documentary was, the first place I ever felt comfortable was at my own dining room table or dinner table. That spoke volumes to me. And I think she said that in relation to a question that a young girl had asked her about, you remember?
Yeah.
Actually, I have it.
Yeah, read the question. So she said that first part about setting a foundation of how, for her, even though the world didn't treat her that way, there was something about learning to be herself and feeling comfortable in her own skin at home, how that started. And then the very next clip kind of goes to this question.
All right, so here was the question. How did you, as a Black woman, persevere through invisibility? And Michelle answered, we can't afford to wait for the world to be equal to start feeling seen. I thought that was so powerful because I think a lot of times, especially being minorities or in groups that you may not feel like you're being treated fairly, I think sometimes the fight is just like wanting for somebody to see you. And that statement said, at some point you got to forget about that, and then you have to own your own power. And you can't wait for things to be equal for you to feel equal, because the world has they can't tell you how you feel. You determine that at your own dinner table, which once again led me to thinking, even as a special education teacher, how often my students feel. They feel invisible sometimes at school. And it's one of the things that I know as a teacher that is not in curricula, but it's my responsibility to help them to see themselves, to help them to find their confidence and to find their voice and to be vocal about it,
Yeah, and one thing I would add too, even though that particular question was saying, okay, hey, I'm a young Black girl talking to you as a grown Black woman, most of the stuff that she talked about were principles that apply to a wide spectrum of people. And so don't get like, oh, well, maybe this is just for people of color or something like that.
Yeah, no.
There's just truths about life. And even as Cindy showed eloquently in that particular point, I think the point that she makes there about you not maybe losing your edge, losing your willpower, losing the drive to go because you realize the world isn't necessarily fair, but still finding a way to go and push past that anyway. I think was really, really good.
Yeah. So what was some of the things that you thought was powerful?
So one of mine was, she told this story about her grandfather that really resonated with me. So here's a quote. She said, "My grandfather Dandy expected us to be great, but he went through life underestimated." To me, it just spoke volumes as she showed pictures of her grandfather from younger years to as he got older. And it was such a sad but a hard truth of he grew up in the midst of racism, in the midst of a tough time in this country. And even though he was an avid reader, was very, very smart, he still set a standard for them of excellence, for them to be, to excel in life, even though he realized and experienced his options being limited. For me, that resonated with me because as I looked at my grandparents' life, they lived through a similar period. They grew up in the Jim Crow South of Georgia and lived with the harsh realities of racism and not being able to achieve. And with them, they did a similar thing. My grandmother was a maid for 50-something years of her life, and uneducated, but very, very wise and smart. And to only have 2 generations later, she helped support me to be able to get 2 master's degrees, kind of speaks volumes to that. And there was a level of expectation for me to be great, even though they were limited in their options during their time.
Yeah. That was really powerful.
Yeah.
Let me also say, I think one of the powerful things about the documentary, and probably more so about Michelle, is that I feel like that as a woman, forget about Black women, whatever, but just as a woman, it's so easy to connect with her, you know? And I think like one of the things that resonated with me as I watched it, like for the rest of her life now, she said she just wants to be around young people. She wants to be a mentor. That is so me, specifically with students who have, you know, learning differences. But one young girl, when she was in a circle, they was talking and they basically wanted to know, why me? Why did we get this opportunity to sit in this circle and to talk to Michelle Obama? And so the young girl was like, she was basically like, I'm nobody. You know, there's some kids that comes to school, they're playing all of these sports, they're in all of these clubs. She's like, I have one club, then I have to leave and go to work. And then, you know, basically, well, why are you working? Well, that was what Michelle asked her. Well, why are you working? She was like, well, my dad was in an accident and he no longer can work like he was working. So basically, she is helping to provide for her family. And Michelle stopped her right there. She said, see, that's it. We look at our lives and see ordinary, but when I heard you tell your story, that's where your power is. And so here is this girl like looking at her life saying like, you know, there's nothing special. You know, I'm not the most popular kid. I'm not doing all of this. No, baby, you are powerful because you're not all of those things. You're doing things, you're building resilience that some other kids are not doing, and not to cast a shadow over that because we all have our path. But the point was that in everybody's story, there is power. And once again, that is what I try to convey to my students all the time, that they have power in their story because of their learning difference. Like, I am so passionate about it. So
no, that's good. I think that's good. I think there's another part maybe similar that stood out where there's a young girl that was in, so a part of it, she showed her going to talk to young people in every city she went in. She kind of had that as a part of her schedule. But she talked about this idea of one young girl asked her, and she said, how do I avoid becoming a statistic, right? As far as I went to college, I checked this box, I checked that box. She's like, but how do I avoid becoming a statistic? Because Michelle told the story about, hey, she says, I believe in stories more than statistics. Statistics are what school did you go to, but stories are what was your grandfather like? Or what was your life like at this point? Like, those are stories. And the thing that she told her was, she said, well, you have to first see yourself as more than a stat. When I think about people with learning differences, I think one of the things are you can easily get caught up in a stat. Like, well, what level are you reading on? Or what does your IEP say? Or what that, and get caught up in the statistics of, well, did you graduate with a certain diploma, or did you do this? And instead, look at your story Instead, take that and say, I don't have to be a statistic. I'm a person. I'm a story. And the cool part is you get to design and create a part of what your story is going to live like and be like.
Oh,
and so I think that was such a great lesson for me that I connected with also with your passion, but also with what was shared there, is that we don't have to be a statistic. Even if we have those expectations, that doesn't define who we are. Can I add one more on
Yes, add, because you know what, I was like, I'm telling you, I was so into the documentary that I didn't write as many notes.
Yeah. and so that part, so that whole part about being a statistic to me tied into another part that I think she was speaking more so to women and young girls on this, but she talked about the idea of as with her and Barack were going to get married and all this, and he started having the aspirations for Senate and everything else. She made a stat that she said that she realized that as they got married and as they were already going towards this big thing ahead of them, that she realized she didn't want to be just an appendage to his dreams. Ooh. And that she had purpose. She had goals as well. And the cool part to me was that didn't have to overshadow. It doesn't have to be a competing thing in marriage or in relationships, how both of y'all can still win together, And so the fact that she said, I didn't want to be an appendage. I wanted to still go for the things that I was passionate about, and to bring it full circle at the end when she was talking with the older women at church, and how the lady said, I'm so glad you weren't just caught up in the frou-frou parts of being the first lady, how you still stood for something and went after those initiatives. And to me, it was almost like a full circle moment to earlier when she talked about the beginning of their marriage and going into presidency, and then when she reflected back that she kept that promise to herself. And I think for students that we talk about, that is one thing, is what are the promises you're making towards yourself? What are the goals that you're setting for yourself? Okay, maybe your goal isn't to get a master's degree, right? But if your goal is to graduate with your regular ed diploma and to get an employment, to get in the military, do whatever it is you want to do, then you got to say, okay, am I still keeping that promise to myself and taking the steps to be able to get to where I need to go? Like when you listen to the stuff of the LD educator and other teachers and people that are supporting you along the way, what are you doing to make sure that you're keeping the promises you make to yourself instead of being a statistic towards some goal to be impressive to other people?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, because it's so easy sometimes to allow someone else's dream, someone else's life to become what we live out, even though it is not our life and it's not our dream. And although this may not be as educational related, I have to say Jason, as my husband, has done an excellent job in just encouraging me to pursue my call, which is working with students or working in the realm of special education. And so he has never overshadowed. And I think Michelle made another point when she was talking about that, though. She was saying how Barack would always prioritize himself,
Right.
She, here she is at
she
home.
just had two babies.
Taking care of two babies. And he had the gym. And she's like, where did you get that time? So, it's about you taking it, and sometimes I know with, me even being a mom, I can so relate. Jason might go and do his thing, and it ain't that he said, oh, you can't do this, or he even implied it. Sometimes we just take on that role instead of saying, hey, well, I have to do this too. So what day, whatever.
Right.
So
yeah. One last one I'll say for me.
Okay.
I know you might have others, but one last one for me was someone asked her about kind of the times we're living in, or if this is when she was talking to the Native American students, and the young man asked her the question about like, hey, I'm in college now and I see certain hostilities or whatever, and the answer, even though it was to the times that he's living in right now here in 2020 or whatever, I still think it speaks volumes to us in a multiple of ways, because what she told him was, she said, don't let this time mark who you will be.
Wow.
She said, all we can do, she said, at the times where they had all this hostility, where the certain news outlets were just coming after them, attacking her, her character, and that's not even who she was and all this stuff. And she was like, instead of really having to fight the fights against that, she said, you know what we could do? She said, all we could do was wake up and do our jobs. All we can do is get up and keep waking up and do our jobs. And this period is not going to define us. What we do as we get up every day and continue to do our job is what's going to define who we are and what we're going to be. And again, I got to go back to it. Don't let, if you find yourself, you say, man, I'm in school and it's difficult or whatever, don't let that define who you are. Yeah. Don't let what your learning difference is define who you are, but instead you work hard. You put yourself in a position that you say, you know what, I'm going to push. I'm going to keep going because what I'm dealing with right now is just a season. It's just something that's going on right now. But the work that I'm going to put in, I'm going to see something on the other side of it. If I continue to push, if I continue to stick to the plan, if I continue to do what I need to do, are there going to be bumps in the road? Sure. Are there going to be setbacks and obstacles? Sure. Absolutely. But if you continue to push, if you continue to go, what you're going to see is the fruit, if you will, or you're going to see the results of you putting all that effort in now, even in the midst of times that might not always feel the best. And so this is just kind of, I don't know, to me, that part spoke volumes of the encouragement that all of us need to hear.
And I was just going to say the same thing. Like, that's, to me, that's the power in her story, because it really doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you are some rich, Black famous person, or maybe some poor person, or Native American, or somebody from the, lesbian community. It doesn't matter. I think we all can see ourselves in various aspects of her life and how she told her story. She's an excellent storyteller. So matter of fact, one of my students' vocabulary words this week is critic. So let's be critics. Okay. What do you overall? Obviously, they know what we feel, but describe overall. Should they watch it? Do we like it? And
overall, it's definitely an hour and a half of your time that you should watch. It's not a partisan type of documentary at all. It doesn't really, even though it's about people who are in politics, it's not about that. It's more so about inspiration and telling stories. And so for me, and it's really, really well done. If you want to be critic, really, really well done. Inspiring, very intentional music and stuff, and just an intimate look. And so to me, I think it was
and you know what else? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it also, with the climate of our nation right now, everything, it just reminded me of a period where it seemed like everybody looked for hope.
Yeah, I thought that was
and then at the end she kind of reminded us that there are still decent people out there,
right?
And so we can't allow ourselves to be hardened by all of the evil things that may be said, that may be done, that we're going through. We have to remember that
we can be kind to each other.
We can be kind to each other, that the human spirit is good. Yeah. Maybe not everybody, but overall, we have to kind of look at each other and find the good in each other.
Yeah, because the only people that you would argue that maybe she beat up on weren't the people who disagree with them, but people who don't vote at all, who don't participate. You think about it. She said good stuff about both sides, really. So I thought that was great.
So, all right, guys. So there you have it. We love the Netflix documentary of Becoming. We definitely think you should check it out. All right. Well, make sure if you have seen it already, leave us a comment. Let us know how you liked it. If you have not seen it, go over. You got Netflix. Go ahead on and stop binging all the other stuff and go ahead on and watch it.
And you know what else? They got to hit that little subscribe button down there on the bottom, right? And so you got to hit the subscribe button with the little bell. So therefore, you'll get notified every time the LD Educator drops new comments and content.
There you go. All right, guys. Once again, thank you. Have a great night.
See you.